Hi everyone, Mariam here with English Free Shop, and in this video I'm going to talk about all the tenses of past. Simple past, past perfect continuous, and past continuous. So without further delay, let's get started. The first past tense that we are going to talk about is simple past. We use simple past to talk about something that happened in the past and finished in the past. Like, I went on holiday last month. She cleaned the house yesterday. To give a series of action in order that they happened. For example, the burglar came in through the door, picked up the woman's handbag and left the house. So first he came in, then he picked up the woman's backpack, and then he left the house. So we use them in the order that they happened. To talk about past repeated actions, in this case we use used to and would. When her son got older, he often would go out to visit his friends after school. To talk about long-term situations in the past that are no longer true. He worked for the police for 20 years. So there are two kinds of verbs in the past, regular verbs and irregular verbs. For regular verbs, we add ed at the end of the infinitive. For irregular verbs, we completely change the form of the verb. For example, eat becomes ate, sleep becomes slept, drink, drank. And there is a table for these verbs that you have to memorize. So there are some spelling rules. Verbs that end in e, when we want to add ed, we only add d at the end of the infinitive. Like live becomes lived with only one e and d. Verbs that end in a consonant and y, like study, the y changes to I and then we add ed, like it becomes studied. Remember that if we have a verb that, like play, that ends in y but before y we have a vowel, we don't change y into I, we just add ed at the end of the y. And then there is 1-1-1 rule, like when we have a verb that has one syllable, one vowel in the middle, and after the vowel we have a consonant. When we want to add ed, we double the last consonant. For example, stop becomes stopped with double p. How do we make simple past? We use subject plus past form of the verb. So as I explained, past form of the verb depends if we have a regular verb or irregular verb. So to make a negative sentence, we use subject plus didn't plus infinitive. And for the question, we use did plus subject plus infinitive. For example, did you watch TV last night? Yes, I did. I watched TV last night. No, I didn't. I didn't watch TV last night. Remember that when we have did, we use simple form of the verb or infinitive without to. Did you watch TV and not did you watched TV. We only use watched, we only use the past form of the verb in the affirmative sentences, not negative and not questions. So when we have to be, we don't use did. So when we have to be, the to be for past is was or were. If we have I, she, he, it, we use was. If we have we, they, you, we use were. And for the negative, of course, we use wasn't, which is the short form for was not, or weren't, which is the short form for were not. Were you at the party last night? No, I wasn't. I was at home. Wasn't is the short form for was not. In this case, we don't use didn't anymore. We use not, we attach not directly to was because it's a to be verb. Was your mom tall when she was a teenager? Yes, she was. She was tall. Were they hungry? No, they weren't. Weren't is the short form for were not. So the time markers for the past are yesterday, this morning, or we can use last, like last month, last week, last year, last Monday, etc. Or we can use time expressions with ago, 2 years ago, 3 days ago, etc. So past continuous, subject plus was, were, plus infinitive plus ing. So the negative form is subject plus wasn't or weren't plus infinitive plus ing. And to make questions, we use was, were, plus subject plus infinitive plus ing. Actually, we only change the place of to be and subject to turn the sentence into a question form. So Example, was she watching football when the telephone rang? Yes, she was. She was watching football when the telephone rang. No, she wasn't. She wasn't watching football when the telephone rang. So when do we use past continuous? We use past continuous to talk about things that we were doing at an exact time in the past. For example, yesterday at 5 o'clock I was cooking dinner. Exactly at 5 o'clock I was cooking dinner. To talk about actions happening in the past when another action interrupted them. For example, I was walking in the park when it started to rain. So I was in the middle of walking when another action, in this case raining, happened and interrupted my walk. It is possible that two actions were happening at the same time in the past. In this case, we use past continuous for both of them. For example, when I was watching TV, my mom was talking on the phone. I was watching TV and at the same time my mom was talking on the phone. The actions happened at the same time in an exact moment in the past. So, used to and would. Subject plus used to plus infinitive, subject plus would plus infinitive. And for the question form, we use did plus subject plus used to plus infinitive, subject plus didn't plus used to plus infinitive. So you have to pay attention that for would, we don't have question and negative forms. When we want to use used to or would, we ask questions and make negative only with used to. So when do we use used to or would? To talk about past repeated actions, some actions that repeatedly happened in the past. For example, she used to play basketball, but she doesn't play it now, of course, but in the past, repeatedly she played basketball. She would open the door unlocked whenever she was at home. Repeatedly, she did that action. It was something that she did repeatedly. We don't use would with negative or yes and no questions, as I mentioned before. She didn't used to play basketball, and we cannot say she wouldn't play basketball. Did she used to play basketball? And we cannot say would she play basketball? It is wrong. So we use used to plus infinitive to talk about permanent situations that are no longer true. In this case, we don't use would. For example, he used to work for the police. It means that now he doesn't work for the police anymore. In this case, we cannot use would. We can only use used to. We don't use used to when we want to talk about how long the situation lasted. For example, he worked for the police for 17 years. In this case, we cannot say he used to work for the police for 17 years. We can use would, and also we can use simple past, but we cannot use used to. We don't use used to with state verbs. Please remember, in this case, we use would. So past perfect. Subject plus had plus past participle. For the negative, we use subject plus hadn't plus past participle. And for the question, we use had plus subject plus past participle. For example, they had listened to music. They hadn't listened to music. Had they listened to music? So when do we use past perfect? When we want to talk about the past and we want to mention something that happened earlier. We can use just, already, or before in this case. For example, when I arrived at the station, the train had already left. So the train left before I arrived to the station. So we are talking about an action that happened before a specific time in the past. We use past perfect with the words when, as soon as, by the time, and after to show the order of the events. When Mozart was born, five of his siblings had already died. We use simple past if the events are mentioned in chronological order. It means if they happened one after another. When I got home, my husband cooked dinner. It means first I got home and then my husband cooked dinner. They happened in the exact order. First I got home and then he cooked dinner. But when we have the opposite order, it means when I got home, my husband had cooked dinner. It means he cooked dinner before I got home. So they are not in the chronological order. So we use past perfect. When I got home, my husband was cooking dinner. It means when I got home, he was in the middle of cooking dinner. So to report past events in the indirect speech. For example, the man told me he had met my father a long time ago. Talk about past disappointments. The politician had expected to be re-elected, but in the end he only got 10% of the votes. So past perfect continuous. We use past perfect continuous to talk about and to focus on how long an activity continued or to focus on the activity itself. For example, times were hard and the family had been struggling for some time. So the struggling was something that lasted for some time in the past. We cannot use past perfect to talk about how many times something happened. For example, I knew the way as I had visited her several times before, and we cannot say as I had been visiting her. You can fill the blanks with simple past, past perfect, or past perfect continuous. So I'm not going to read this, I'm not going to do it at all, so you can press pause here in this part of the video and take your time to answer the questions. Okay, now I think it's time to read it together and explain the answers. Okay, last year my friend arranged for us to try fire walking, which is when you walk on hot coals. In this sentence we have last year, which is a time marker for simple past, so it shows that we must use simple past here as we did. Like arranged is simple past. I had always been fascinated by it and I had heard people say it was an unforgettable experience. So before my friend arranged for us to try fire walking, I had this experience. I had been fascinating, so it happened before that time in the past. So of course we use past perfect. This is also true for I had heard, because before she arranged for us to go fire walking, I had heard about it. I was very excited when I arrived, although beforehand I had been feeling a little frightened. So when I arrived, of course it's simple past, and I had been feeling before I arrived, so it is past perfect. Our teacher was very good, and by tea time we had learned a great deal. So we have by tea time, by a specific time in the past, so we must use past perfect. I had been expecting. In this case, you can use past perfect continuous or past perfect. Both of them are correct. And this is about a wish and about an expectation in the past. Had been expecting, or I had been expected to be terrified when the time came to walk, but as I took off my shoes and socks, I didn't feel afraid. So both of them are simple past because they show a specific time. I approached the coal as all my friends before me had done and started walking. So all my friends had taken off their shoes before I approached the coals. So we use past perfect for had done, and we use simple past for I approached and I started. So I hope this lesson was useful for you. If you liked the video, please don't forget to press the like button and subscribe to watch more videos. Thank you for watching. See you next time.